Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I'm John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. We got a great topic for you today. Let's explore. What's the most terrifying nightmare you've ever had? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. I have this nightmare. I'm sitting in the lounge talking to my dad about generic stuff, and he suddenly stops talking at certain points in the conversation, like frozen. The conversation, regardless of topic, which changes in each dream, just won't move past certain points. Then there's this slow realization that I'm dreaming, and that I've been replaying it in my head, the conversation with my dad when he was alive. And the reason why the conversations would never pass a certain point is because we hadn't had them when he was alive. At that point, I go through the whole process of realizing that he has died and gone forever. It's crushing, like that moment when I first heard he'd gone. I'll wake up weeping each time. The messed up thing, after I eventually compose myself and doze back off to sleep, I wake up 10 minutes later having had the same dream play out again. It will play out all night sometimes. A night of that means I'm physically and emotionally shattered to the core the next day. I had a dream once that a woman moved into the house across the street and down a block with her 3 children. Some demon or spirit or entity or whatever got in its head to destroy her life. It tormented the absolute F out of those children and left her completely unharmed to give the impression that she was abusing them. I could see it happening from my window. I could see her hugging them and trying to shield them, and it was just laying into them regardless, pure hatred. Eventually, her neighbors drug her outside and atoned for her treatment of them. They did so by stoning her and beating her to death. I did everything I could to tell them it wasn't her, to no avail. The next morning, those 3 children were all hanging by their necks from the overhang of the roof, and their feet were banging against the side of their house, very rhythmically, like a hammer plying its work. And this thing called out to them all, "Look at what it is I got you to do." When I woke up, it was 2 workers installing a new roof to the apartment building across the street, and they were pounding away in the same rhythm as their feet, and for the time it took me to get to my window to look out, I experienced pure, unadulterated terror. When I was about 7 or 8, I dreamed a woman who had been burned all over her body. You know when you over-grill a hot dog and it gets black and flaky in parts? That's what her skin looked like. I dreamt she grabbed my hand that was hanging over the top of the mattress between the headboard. My grandma came into the room and chopped the lady's hand off at the wrist, and while the lady screamed, her hand held on tight to my wrist. It eventually fell off and moved toward the lady. I haven't been able to sleep with my hand hanging off the bed above my head since, and that was 21 or so years ago. Has a dream or a different type of stimulation given you some type of mild OCD? I kind of make sure my body is all in the frame of the bed and I say the word shield, like I'm putting some invisible shield up. It's weird, but I do it. I have dreams about walking down a long dark hallway to a small spotlight and pedestal. The whole way I'm trying to recall memories of my life, and I realize with dread that I am dead, and I'm walking the hallway to my judgment. I try to walk as slowly as possible to buy myself time because I know I've never lived a good enough life to earn an afterlife, and I will be wiped out of existence once I reach the pedestal. I know these things for a fact, and it's just a walk of hopelessness, self-loathing, and existential dread. I also had a dream once that I woke up and Squidward was standing next to my bed staring at me. That was scary. That asteroids were falling to Earth and I was stuck in traffic in the back of a taxi cab. Another one is a recurring dream I've had since childhood, where a witch, complete with trope with green skin and pointed hat, hunts for me and eventually strangles me to death. I can't run fast, I can't scream, and she's insanely strong. I always wake up in a cold sweat, completely pale. And now and again, I have nightmares about living in Alaska with my rapist. I wake up and I'm back in my bedroom or a hotel room in Anchorage. I'm always paralyzed as things happen to me. I don't want to talk about that one, but for years, when that nightmare was more frequent, I apparently would grit my teeth in my sleep, clutch the blanket for dear life, or start flinching and inevitably wake up screaming. I thought I'd known true terror up until then. The very first nightmare I ever really remember having as a kid, I woke up feeling so freaked out. I was 11-ish. I was walking in one of those big sewer drain pipes or something similar. I noticed an arm on the floor. Then slowly I realized there are parts of people everywhere. I hear snarling and realize the room is full of wolves. I was a wolf-obsessed kid, so go figure. But I can't really see them. They're all in the dark, and only their eyes and occasionally face or legs would show. But I know they're there. I realize one is holding the arm I saw earlier. I feel like I'm about to die from shock. Suddenly, the whole place is filled with a voice that was everywhere and also in my head. "We're so hungry." I woke up and cried. I was a very odd kid. I also had a nightmare about being thrown into the ocean with bricks tied to my legs the very night I watched Cabin by the Lake. When we first moved into our house, my partner and our 2 children, my son wouldn't sleep well. He kept telling me there was a bad man in his room, so I told him he can sleep on the couch if he wants. He used to wake up every night at midnight, and it would take an hour to go back to bed. At night, I would feel watched while putting him to bed. I would comfort myself with a nightlight. An adult scared of her own house at night? Laugh it up. One night I had this nightmare. My son just woke up crying. I went into the living room to comfort him. When he was asleep again, I had felt a bad presence watching me from the kitchen. I walked into the kitchen and said, "Leave my house. This is our house now." Suddenly a man with a red glow, I suppose a demon, attacks me. He hit me so hard I landed in the living room on my back. He's laying on top of me, whispering something to me in a different language. I just started crying, asking the demon to let me go and not to hurt the children. My partner woke me up after that. Till this very day, I do still feel watched from the kitchen. I do hear noises too. I just pretend I don't hear anything. My son still won't sleep in his room. I allow it because I don't want him to be uncomfortable while he's asleep. But he no longer wakes up anymore crying about being scared, at least. I had one several months ago. I had 2 young boys, 7 and 3. In the dream, we were running from a bear. I managed to climb up onto a big bookshelf type thing while the bear was standing up on its hind legs clawing at us. I had my boys. We were all on top. I held up the younger one but couldn't steady myself to hold both, and I saw the claws reaching closer and closer to my other boy. I couldn't help them both. I couldn't put the younger one down to help the older. They were both frantically screaming and trying to climb up me. I just saw this snarling bear staring up at us and I thought, I need to choose, but I can't. I woke up scared to drift back to sleep because I didn't want to jump back into that dream. It was a horrible feeling. Very Sophie's choice of you right here. Horrible. And there's no good choice to make there, just heartbreaking. Sorry, terrible, terrible dream. I had a dream a few months ago that disturbed the hell out of me. I was kidnapped along with a group of people consisting of an assortment of friends, family, and colleagues. The person holding us captive bet me our freedom that he could break me in 30 minutes, and if he did, we would all be killed. I went with him, and he sat me in front of a monitor and proceeded to show me clip after clip of terrifying, gruesome videos, as he knew I have absolutely no tolerance for gore, horror movies, anything like that. The one that I remember really vividly was a group of people standing around a baby. The baby had done something they had decided was demonic, and as punishment, they were cutting its legs off. Needless to say, I woke up in a cold sweat with my heart pounding. The thing that freaked me out the most was less the dream itself and more that my subconscious had conjured up these images for dream me to watch. I really, really hope to never have that dream again. The ones that scare me the most are the ones that turn on a dime. My parents live in a house in the country with a glass pane in the front door that you can see through. Once I was having a super mundane dream that I was just poking around the kitchen at the back of the house, but there's a part of it where you can see all the way to the front when the interior doors are open. And there was a stranger at the door. He silently pointed a rifle at me and I woke up in a panic. More recently, I had a super involved dream that I was teaching a group of small children about basic civics. I'm not a civics expert, and I don't care for children, so odd, but whatever. We were having fun, and the kids learning things, and it was oddly satisfying. Then, Inception style, I dreamed that I woke up, and one of the kids from the dream was standing over me in bed and started trying to tear out my jugular with their teeth. And then I woke up for real, and had to go find my spouse, who had gotten up to get a midnight snack or use the toilet or something, while I was asleep to make sure there wasn't a demon vampire child in the house. Both times, we were both split-second things, but they sat with me, the former for like 25 or 30 years. Had a lot of really bad nightmares while taking antidepressants last year. The most emotionally upsetting dreams I had was that my grandpa was for some reason going berserk or something and I had to kill him. I just remember saying, "I love you, I'm sorry," over and over. I'm not going to go into more detail than that because it's too upsetting to think about. I've never been able to tell anyone I know about it. I was upset for days after having that dream. The most horror-scary dream I've had was very long and pretty detailed. I don't remember everything exactly, especially the details, lol, but I was driving somewhere with my sister and her boyfriend and our car broke down right outside of a very small town. There was a mechanic guy there, but he could, for whatever reason, not fix the car until the following day, so we had to stay overnight. I was very uncomfortable with it because the place just felt off. We were at the outskirts of town at the edge of the woods when people started coming out between the trees. They were all dressed the same, and they were basically some sort of cult that lived in the forest. My sister's boyfriend had randomly started picking some berries, which they thought was funny when I told them about the dream because it is pretty a him thing to do. And they confronted him and said he couldn't take those. I think they basically threatened him that they'd take him if he didn't return the berries because it was their forest or whatever. The scene was much longer, but I can't remember much of it. I think I was talking to some of the cult people and they seemed pretty nice for the most part, but they were still kind of unsettling and they had a weird vibe. So I was stuck between a town that gave me a very bad feeling and a forest with a creepy cult that also gave me a bad feeling overnight. And I have this very strong sense of dread. The next part makes very little sense, but I think my sister and her boyfriend were at the guy's car house, and I was at the blacksmith's forge with Sam Winchester from Supernatural because his shoe was broken and he needed to fix it or something. But I think he was the car guy. He just turned into Sam randomly because dream logic. Next thing I remember in the dream is that I'm at the edge of the woods again, but it's nighttime and I'm alone. And I have to get back to the town, but everything felt so heavy when I tried to move. So I was just crawling along the road, but the road was covered in large amounts of dismembered body parts. And they were everywhere, so I had to crawl over them. So I was just trying to drag myself over all these corpses, plus and piles, and it was so difficult, and the sense of dread was back and very strong. I think something was glowing blue, and then I woke up. It took a pretty long time for the dread to go away. I think a lot of the dream is based on the movie House of Wax. The creepy car guy drove a creepy truck, the needing to stay with the said guy overnight. The actor who played Sam Winchester is also in House of Wax, and there was a kind of distinct slice of a jaw that I had to crawl over that reminded me of a scene in that movie. I tried to watch that movie with my sister at some point in my early-ish teens because I liked the actor who played Sam and I was trying to learn to watch horror movies. I'm a huge wimp. I had to give up like halfway through the movie because it was too upsetting. I still can't really watch horror, lol. I'm okay with certain things, but generally things go very poorly for people in horror movies, and I over-empathize with fictional characters to the point that it makes me too upset when things inevitably go wrong. The only horror movie I've seen and enjoyed is Silence of the Lambs. Great movie. Completely unscary to me, lol. Which is kind of funny because the scariest dream I had as a child involved cannibals that tried to eat me. So you'd think Hannibal would be scary, but I felt like he was completely non-threatening towards Clarice, and since she's the character we're following in the story, that made him feel pretty harmless to me too. I was at my parents' house with my wife and my cats. Why am I at my parents' house specifically with my cats? I have no idea, doesn't make sense, but it's a dream, so obviously you just roll with it. Storm whips up. Tornado drops. I'm not scared of tornadoes in the least. I have a healthy respect for them, but I grew up in Kansas, where tornado watch means, hey, the weather's good to go to the lake. Anyway, tornado drops, house takes significant damage. I'm fine. My wife is fine. My parents are both fine. I hear pained mewing, and I turn around and I find our favorite cat, our special baby kitty, missing a chunk of its skull, blood everywhere, brain exposed, mewing pitifully while crawling around in a circle. Woke up with a start, feeling incredibly nauseous. She was lounging on the back of the sofa, gave her a hug, much to her chagrin, and tried not to think about it anymore. That was a few years ago, and almost 2,000 miles ago since we moved from Kansas in 2019. She's still doing fine. Well, at least you know, never bring your cats to your parents' house, even if it's a 2,000-mile trip. Hire a cat sitter. When I was 17, my dad attacked me for having a panic attack. He pushed me into instead of letting me have a moment to calm back down like I had learned how to in therapy. It happened in a bathroom, and for a month after, would have nightmares of him chasing me and me hiding in the bathroom, or the dream would start in the bathroom. In both scenarios, he'd hold me by my jaw or hair and run knives over my head and face. One of the kitchen knives, like an emoji. He didn't use a knife when he attacked me, but he always did in my nightmares. I once dreamed of my dad cutting open his stomach and pulling out and throwing various organs on the ground while laughing hysterically. Another horrible one was a fever dream I had a few months ago while I had COVID. It took a while for me to fall asleep as I had a high fever, but when I did, I dreamed that I was in my high school's wood shop. After school was over, it was summer vacation in my dream, I was just standing there alone, sweating and shivering, feeling like collapsing on the floor, all while an overwhelming sense of apprehension and dread loomed over me.